So do you really have to follow the spacing recommended on seed packages? The short answer is no, and the long answer is yes, but sort of. Hi, my name is Rachel, and welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. If you found what I just said to be very confusing, then you are in very good company, because plant spacing, while it seems straightforward because every seed packet comes with a recommended spacing for your plants, it's not actually just that easy, and I'm going to help explain to you why. So the numbers on your seed packet, they are a good guide to start with, but what a lot of people don't know is that what is on your seed packet is actually what is recommended for if you are growing an entire block of that thing in rows. It is not necessarily catered to somebody with a home garden in their backyard. It is more for like large-scale farming, which, you know, why haven't they changed it? I don't know, but that is what it actually is for. And so when you are looking at that number and trying to interpret it for your home garden, you have to know that, and you also have to know a few other things. So let's take peppers as a good example of this. This packet and most of my other packets of sweet peppers have the same information, which says plant spacing 18 inches apart. You will also find on some seed packets that there is a row spacing that is different and usually larger than the actual plant spacing. And like I said, what that is for when you are planting in big rows for farming. The row spacing is not how far your plants actually need to be from each other to grow healthy. It is how far your plants need to be away from each other so that standard sized farm equipment can fit through the rows. And if you're gardening in your backyard, that's really not helpful to you. So first things first is plant spacing is the only number that really applies to you in a home garden. The second thing to know about that number is that it is a diameter, not a radius. If we go back to geometry for a second, a circle, if you draw a line from the middle to the outside, that is the radius. And if you draw a line all the way across going through the center, that is the diameter. And so if you imagine that your plant is at the center of that circle, this plant spacing is really telling you what the diameter across needs to be, not what the radius needs to be. So this number, it says 18 inches apart on my pepper plants. And what that actually means is I need 9 inches on one side and 9 inches on the other side. And so when you're thinking about how to space your plants, that is your starting point. From there, you're going to have to do a little bit of extrapolation. Now, with home gardens, I imagine you want to fit as much in there as you can because you have a limited space. If you don't have limited space and you feel like you have plenty of room to plant what you want following that spacing, then by all means, look at that, just go with it. But if you are wanting to sort of maximize your space, then you need to sort of think about how to creatively arrange your plants so that they all get the same amount of space, the right amount of space that they need, but you are kind of breaking out from having to plant everything in straight rows and just going 9 inches, 9 inches, 9 inches. So I'm about to plant out my pepper plants. You can see them in the red cups here. And the first thing I'm thinking about when I am spacing these is this sort of triangle pattern. You can see it a little better as we go here. I am doing, I guess, more of a diamond pattern. This one's fallen over. But this way I have space here, 9 inches. This is actually a little bit longer, but 9 inches, 9 inches, all from there. And things are a little bit off kilter because of the onions here, which is the second point I want to make to you, is that plants need different space depending on how big they are or how big you are planning to let them get. If you plant things closer together than what the seed packet says, your plants will still be okay, but they will not get as big as they maybe potentially could if they were planted farther apart. And so, where the onions come into play. The onions only need to be in the ground for about another month. And in that time, the peppers are starting small like they are, and they will grow a little bit bigger. So by the time I am pulling out the onions, the peppers will be kind of really starting to need that extra space. But for now, they're okay being so close to the onions because they aren't yet that big and they are not yet needing all of that space. So let me show you another example. This is garlic. Garlic is going to be harvestable for me in about late June, early July. And these are my eggplants, which I'm about to put in. And right now they are small, and they are kind of shaded out by these garlic. But they're not going to really start getting huge until about June, which is about a month from now, when the garlic is fixing to get ready to be harvested. And similar with this lettuce. Actually, this lettuce is about to come out in the next couple of days because I have a meal plan for that. And so this eggplant is going to get its space a little bit sooner. And similar for this eggplant. So the last piece of this puzzle that you might want to really consider when you're thinking about how far away to space your plants is to actually observe your plants and what other people have observed about their plants, if you can, and figure out what each plant likes in terms of its spacing. Because a lot of times what is on the spacing is going to be a little more uniform and like kind of farther apart than they technically need to be. For example, peppers like to, as people say, hold hands. And so they can be put a little bit closer together than, say, something like tomatoes, especially independent tomatoes, which are just going to go crazy. Speaking of tomatoes, how you're going to prune some plants that need pruning is going to adjust how close you can space them. For example, with the tomatoes, your indeterminates, a lot of people will cut off all of the lower leaves and leave just a bare stem and have all the new growth on the top. And if you are pruning them that way, then you can theoretically stick them a little closer together than if you were to not prune them at all and let them go wild and bush out. In that case, you would need to leave them so much more space. And so I don't blame you if you look at the spacing and it's your first year and you're like, I don't know what to do. My advice is to take this first year that you're gardening and just experiment. Maybe follow exactly what the seed packet says and go from there. See how your plants turn out, how big they are, what your harvests look like, whether or not your plants were crowded or if they seemed like they were spaced really far apart. All of these things are important as a new gardener to observe and use to inform your further decisions, because as frustrating as it is, there is nobody else in the world that can tell you exactly how to plant in your space with all of the methods that you are planning on using. I can only tell you what works in my garden using my methods, and I will do as good of a job as I can to show you exactly what I'm doing and how it's working out. If you want to check in on how the spacing of these peppers and eggplants turns out, you can follow my garden tours. I do post a new garden tour every single Wednesday, and I do that because I want you guys to be able to see how my garden progresses over time given these decisions that I'm making, so that you can take in that information and use that to inform the decisions that you're making in your garden. And it is not to say this is the way you should do it in your garden, this is to say this is the way it's working in my garden, and hopefully you can extrapolate to how it might or might not work in your space. Okay, so that is your plant spacing crash course with a little bit of interplanting thrown in there, but I hope that it sort of, well, it can't fully clear up your confusion, but I hope it clears up for you what it is you have to do to learn how to space your plants properly in your space. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I wish you happy gardening.